Everyone was taught the same rule: work hard, stay loyal, put in the hours, and success will follow. That promise shaped generations. Parents repeated it. Schools reinforced it. Society rewarded it. For a long time, it actually worked. Effort led to income. Income led to stability. Stability led to progress. But something changed. Quietly, gradually, without an announcement, people started working more. Longer hours, more pressure, more competition. Yet outcomes worsened. Paychecks felt smaller. Bills felt heavier. Savings felt impossible. Hard work no longer moved the needle. This created confusion, then frustration, then burnout. People blamed themselves. They worked harder, took extra shifts, skipped rest. Still, nothing changed. The mystery deepened. If effort increased, why didn't rewards? Productivity data tells a strange story. Workers produce more than ever. Technology boosted output. Efficiency exploded, yet wages stayed flat. Profits rose instead. Stock markets climbed. Executives thrived. Workers struggled. This wasn't coincidence. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't personal failure. It was structural. The rules had shifted. Hard work was no longer enough. But no one explained why. To understand this, we must go back before the break, before the shift, before effort lost its power. Because once you see the origin, everything else makes sense. There was a time when effort had weight. Work meant value. Value meant pay. Pay meant progress. In the early 1900s, most economies were simple. Factories needed labor. Labor was scarce. Workers had leverage. If production grew, wages followed. Productivity and pay moved together. One job could support a family. Homes were affordable. Education was optional. Debt was rare. Savings grew slowly but safely. Hard work wasn't exciting, but it was reliable. Then the world changed. Wars demanded resources. Governments needed funding. Expanded rapidly. Industries scaled fast. After World War II, growth exploded. Factories multiplied. Suburbs expanded. Middle classes formed. Unions negotiated power. Benefits became standard. Pensions promised security. Loyalty was rewarded. Employers invested in workers. Workers invested time. It was an exchange. Effort for stability. Not wealth, but dignity. This era built expectations. Parents trusted this system. They taught the formula. Work hard, stay patient. Everything will come. For decades, it did. But systems evolve and incentives shift. Quietly, without warning, global competition increased. Transportation became cheaper. Labor crossed borders. Companies gained options. Workers lost leverage. At first, no one noticed. Jobs still existed. Paychecks still came. But something subtle changed. Raises slowed. Security weakened. Benefits shrank. Effort stayed constant. Rewards didn't. The foundation cracked, but the advice remained. And that mismatch would soon explode. By the 1970s, pressure was building. Inflation surged. Energy prices exploded. Governments felt trapped. Old rules stopped working. Gold limited flexibility. Debt demanded expansion, so the system adapted. Money became policy. Interest rates became tools. Corporations gained freedom. Regulations loosened. Capital moved faster. Labor stayed behind. Factories went global. Jobs followed cost. Wages faced competition. Workers didn't. At the same time, technology advanced. Automation replaced roles. Computers scaled output. Productivity jumped again, but pay didn't. The link finally broke. Effort increased. Compensation stalled. Profits filled the gap. Shareholders benefited. Executives were rewarded. Stock prices climbed. Incentives realigned upward. Labor became an expense, not a partner. Security vanished slowly. Temporary work expanded. Benefits were cut. Pensions disappeared. Risk shifted downward. Workers absorbed volatility. Companies absorbed gains. This wasn't evil. It was efficient. Efficiency rewarded capital, not time, not effort. People felt the change. They worked longer. They saved less. They borrowed more. Debt bridged the gap. Credit normalized survival. Hard work became maintenance. Not progress. The promise fractured, but the language didn't. Motivation replaced security. Hustle replaced stability. Personal responsibility replaced structure. People blamed habits, not incentives, but incentives drive behavior, and the incentives had shifted. This was the breaking point. The moment effort lost power, the moment the system moved on. The fallout didn't arrive overnight. It crept in quietly. Wages stalled. Costs didn't. Housing climbed first, then education, then healthcare. Paychecks lagged behind reality. People adapted. They worked overtime. They took second jobs. They sacrificed rest. 2 incomes replaced 1. Debt replaced savings. Credit cards filled gaps. Student loans delayed adulthood. Hard work became survival, not advancement. Stress became normal. Burnout became common. Still, people blamed themselves. They tried harder, learned new skills, chased promotions, switched jobs. But progress felt temporary. Every gain was erased by rising costs, by inflation, by instability. Meanwhile, markets boomed. Stocks surged. Real estate exploded. Wealth concentrated. Ownership paid dividends. Labor paid bills. The divide widened yearly. Not by effort, by position. Those with assets gained leverage. Those without stayed exposed. Work no longer scaled. Ownership did. This changed behavior. People chased credentials. Degrees multiplied. Debt ballooned. Returns diminished. Experience lost value. Networks gained power. Connections mattered more than output. Timing beat effort. Location beat loyalty. The rules felt unfair, but they were consistent. The system rewarded scale, not strength. People felt trapped. They worked constantly, yet stayed fragile. One emergency away from collapse. This fragility wasn't accidental. It was a byproduct. Risk had been transferred from institutions to individuals. Stability was removed. Flexibility was praised. Freedom was promised. But insecurities followed. Hard work still mattered. Just not enough. Not alone. Not anymore. The system had changed roles. Workers became buffers, absorbing shocks, protecting profits. This was the new normal, and it wasn't finished. Governments noticed the strain, couldn't ignore it. Productivity was rising, living standards weren't. So fixes were proposed, minimum wage increases, tax credits, stimulus checks, job training programs. Each helped briefly, none fixed the core. Because the problem wasn't effort, it was alignment. The economy had changed shape. Labor was no longer central. Capital was. Ownership determined outcomes. Policies avoided this truth because it was uncomfortable. Admitting it meant reform. Reform meant resistance. So fixes stayed shallow. Money was injected. Markets responded instantly. Asset prices surged. Wages followed slowly, if at all. This pattern repeated. Crisis hits. Liquidity flows. Assets recover. Workers wait. Each cycle widens gaps, not intentionally, structurally. Central banks focused on stability. But stability for markets, not livelihoods. Inflation became acceptable, as long as growth continued. But inflation punishes labor. It rewards ownership. Savers lost quietly. Workers absorbed costs. Meanwhile, work culture intensified. Hustle became identity. Rest felt irresponsible. Burnout was normalized. Productivity tools multiplied. Hours expanded digitally. Boundaries disappeared. Effort increased again. Returns didn't. People felt betrayed. But systems don't feel. They respond to incentives, and incentives favored capital, not hours, not loyalty, not sacrifice. This realization spread quietly. Online communities formed. Questions emerged. Why work endlessly? Why chase diminishing returns? Why does effort feel hollow? The answer was emerging. Hard work wasn't pointless. It was misdirected, used to sustain systems, not build freedom. Effort without ownership stalled. Time without leverage evaporated. People sensed this truth, even if they couldn't explain it, which leads to the final question. If hard work alone isn't enough, what actually works now? The modern world makes it obvious. People work constantly. Emails never stop. Jobs follow home, yet security feels fragile. This isn't because people are weak. It's because effort was rerouted. The system evolved. The advice didn't. Today, wealth flows differently. Ownership compounds, labor resets, assets scale. Ours don't. This is the modern divide. Not lazy versus driven, but leveraged versus exposed. Understanding this changes everything. Hard work becomes intentional, not endless. The first takeaway is simple. Effort is fuel. Direction determines distance. Working hard without leverage burns out. Working hard with leverage builds freedom. The second takeaway matters more. Ownership captures upside. Labor absorbs risk. Without ownership, you rent your life. With ownership, time starts working back. The third takeaway is uncomfortable. The system will not slow down. It will not reset for you. Waiting is expensive. Stillness compounds against you. This is the warning. Comfort delays clarity. Stability can be deceptive. Effort alone feels productive until years disappear. This isn't a call to quit work. It's a call to rethink it. What is your effort building? Skills, assets, leverage, or just survival? The future rewards alignment, not sacrifice. Those who adapt quietly win. Those who cling to old rules struggle longer. Now you see the structure. You see the incentives. You see the pattern. What you do next matters. Because time keeps moving. Costs keep rising. Systems keep optimizing. If this gave you clarity, share it with someone still blaming themselves. Subscribe if you want explanations, not empty motivation. Because once you understand the system, hard work stops feeling pointless. It starts becoming strategic. And strategy is what finally changes outcomes.